A teacher told this little girl her lunch didn't meet school standards, then ate it herself every day. But when the girl's mom set a trap, she exposed something even more disturbing. Denise Holloway glanced at the clock on the kitchen wall, her fingers drumming lightly against the counter. It was 3:45 p.m., just enough time for her daughter, Brielle, to walk home from school and push through the front door with the usual burst of energy. But when the door finally creaked open, Brielle shuffled in with slow, deliberate steps. Her backpack sagged off one shoulder, and her usual bright smile was nowhere to be seen. "Hey, baby," Denise called out, keeping her tone light. "How was school?" "Fine," Brielle muttered, dropping her bag onto the floor. Denise narrowed her eyes slightly. Something wasn't right. She watched as Brielle walked straight to the fridge, yanked it open, and grabbed the leftover chicken Alfredo from last night. No hesitation. No, "Can I have a snack?" like usual. Denise folded her arms. "You didn't eat your lunch?" Brielle froze mid-bite, her fork hovering over the container. "I did," she said quickly, chewing fast. Too fast. Denise took a slow step forward, eyeing the lunchbox still sitting in Brielle's backpack, unopened. She bent down, unzipped it, and there it was. Everything untouched. A sandwich, apple slices, a granola bar. Exactly how she packed it that morning. Denise straightened up. "Then what's this?" Brielle's shoulders tensed, her fingers gripping the fork tighter. I wasn't hungry," she stammered. "I was saving it for later." Denise studied her daughter's face. She had been a single mom long enough to recognize when Brielle was hiding something. "That's the third time this week," Denise said carefully. "Brielle, if something's wrong, you can tell me." Brielle kept chewing, eyes fixed on the table. Denise sighed, kneeling next to her. "Baby, I don't care what it is. I just need to know what's going on." Silence down. Then, finally, Brielle set the fork down and whispered, "It's nothing, Mama. I'm just not hungry at school." The lie was so obvious it hurt. But Denise didn't push. Not yet. Instead, she watched. Every day that week, she packed Brielle's lunch just like always. And every afternoon, the same thing happened. Brielle walked through the door starving, her lunch untouched. By Friday, Denise was done waiting. That morning, she carefully packed Brielle's lunch. Turkey and cheese sandwich, baby carrots, pretzels, and a juice box. Then she kissed her daughter's forehead and sent her off to school. But instead of heading to work, she waited. An hour later, she was parked across the street from Westlake Elementary, watching kids spill onto the playground for recess. Then she saw her. Brielle stood near the swings, hands stuffed into her pockets. Beside her, another girl unwrapped a sandwich, one that looked exactly like the one Denise packed. Her stomach twisted. Was Brielle giving her lunch away? The thought stung. But Denise wasn't angry. If her daughter was helping a hungry classmate, she'd understand. They had been through hard times before. But something about Brielle's body language felt off. She wasn't standing close to the girl. She wasn't talking. She was just watching. Denise pulled out her phone and texted me. "Hey baby, how's school? You eat yet?" A few seconds later, Brielle responded. Brielle. "Not yet." Denise's pulse quickened. She looked up just in time to see the girl finish the sandwich and walk away, straight toward the school building. And then it clicked. That wasn't Brielle's friend. That was her teacher. But why was a teacher eating her daughter's lunch? Denise sat on the couch later that evening, phone in hand, staring at the text messages from earlier. Her mind kept circling back to what she saw, her daughter's teacher eating the lunch she had packed. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something wasn't right. And Brielle? She was acting like a child caught in a lie, but Denise knew her well enough to recognize when fear was keeping her quiet. She exhaled slowly. It was time to get some answers. "Brielle, come here for a second," she called. Brielle hesitated before stepping into the living room, her fingers curled around the hem of her t-shirt. "Yeah?" Denise patted the spot next to her. "Sit." Her daughter obeyed, but she didn't meet her mother's gaze. Denise didn't waste time. "Baby, I saw Ms. Reynolds today." Brielle flinched. Just slightly, but enough. Denise pressed forward. I saw her eating lunch outside during recess. A pause. Your lunch. Brielle's breathing quickened. Her eyes darted to the side. I don't know what you mean. Denise turned her body toward her daughter. Sweetheart, stop. I know you're scared. But I need you to tell me the truth. Brielle's lip trembled. She swallowed hard and whispered, You're gonna be mad. Denise softened, wrapping an arm around her. Not at you. For a few moments there was nothing but the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Brielle spoke. She takes it. Denise tensed. Every day? Brielle nodded. Why? Brielle hesitated. Her fingers twisted in her lap. She says my lunches don't follow the school's food rules. Denise frowned. Food rules? She says I bring unhealthy food? Denise's stomach twisted. That didn't make sense. She packed well-balanced meals, whole grain sandwiches, fruits, water instead of soda. She made sure of it. And you're the only one she does this to. Brielle gave a tiny nod. Denise clenched her jaw. Brielle, does she ever take anything else from you? Your snacks? Your school supplies? A slight shake of the head. Denise felt something boiling beneath her skin. If this was about nutrition, why weren't other kids being singled out? And why was Ms. Reynolds eating the food herself instead of throwing it away? Why didn't you tell me? She asked gently. Brielle wiped her nose. Because she said if I told, she'd give me detention for lying. Denise's breath hitched. She said what? Brielle's voice was barely audible. She told me she'd say I was making it up. And she's really mean when she's mad. A fresh wave of rage surged through Denise. No teacher, no one, should have that kind of power over a child. She exhaled through her nose, keeping her voice steady. Okay, listen to me, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. And you don't have to be scared, because I'm handling this. Brielle blinked up at her. You promise? Denise kissed her forehead. I promise. But as her daughter curled up beside her, Denise's mind was already spinning. She needed proof, undeniable proof, and she had the perfect idea. Denise barely slept that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every word Brielle had said. Ms. Reynolds was taking her lunch, threatening her, making her feel powerless. That wasn't just unfair. It was cruel. Denise had spent years teaching Brielle to stand up for herself, to know her worth. No one, especially not a teacher, was going to tear that down. By morning, she had a plan. She stepped into the kitchen before sunrise, taking extra care with Brielle's lunch. Turkey and cheese sandwich, apple slices, pretzels, and one extra addition. A small voice recorder tucked discreetly inside the side pocket of Brielle's lunchbox. She hesitated for a moment, fingers hovering over the zipper. Was this going too far? No. If Ms. Reynolds was bold enough to steal from a child, she wouldn't stop unless someone forced her to. Denise took a deep breath and zipped the lunchbox shut. When Brielle came downstairs rubbing the sleep from her eyes, Denise greeted her with a warm smile. Hey, baby, you hungry? Brielle shook her head. She looked tired. Too tired for a 10-year-old. Denise knelt beside her. I packed your lunch, same as always. Something flickered in Brielle's eyes. Fear? Resignation? She chewed on her bottom lip. What if she takes it again? Denise ran a hand over her daughter's curls. Then we'll know for sure, Brielle frowned. Know what? Denise leaned in, lowering her voice. That it's not about the food. Brielle swallowed hard. What if she gets mad? Denise's tone was firm. She won't get mad at you. I promise. Brielle hesitated, then slowly nodded. A few minutes later, Denise watched from the window as her daughter walked toward the school bus, clutching her lunchbox a little tighter than usual. Her heart ached. No child should have to go to school feeling this way. But if everything went as planned, this would be the last time. The school day felt like an eternity. Denise could hardly focus at work. She checked the clock every few minutes, her leg bouncing beneath her desk. She had never been the kind of parent to cause trouble at school. She respected teachers, knew they had tough jobs. But this? This wasn't about rules or policies. This was something else. By 3:30, she was already parked outside the house, waiting for Brielle. The second the front door opened, Denise knew. Brielle stood there, lunchbox dangling from her fingers. She looked exhausted. Denise's stomach tightened. Did she take it? Brielle gave a small nod. Yeah. Denise took the lunchbox from her, hands steady despite the fire burning inside her. She unzipped the side pocket, pulled out the recorder, and pressed play. The moment she heard Ms. Reynolds' voice, her jaw clenched. Then a rustling sound, a lunchbox opening, then clear as day. You don't need this today. You know the rules. A pause. But Brielle's tiny voice, hesitant, scared. Do you want detention? No. Then hand it over. Another rustling sound. That's a good girl. You know, you really should be grateful. I'm making sure you stay in line. The recording crackled for a few seconds. Then, in a quieter tone, as if speaking to herself, this one's good. Denise's entire body stiffened. Brielle was watching her, eyes wide. Mom? Denise inhaled sharply. This woman wasn't just taking her daughter's lunch. She was enjoying it, mocking her. Her hands curled into fists. She stood, grabbed her car keys, and turned to Brielle. Get in the car. It was time to end this. Denise's grip on the steering wheel was tight as she pulled into the parking lot of Brookside Elementary. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was clear. This wasn't a conversation. This was a reckoning. Brielle sat in the passenger seat, silent, her hands resting in her lap. Are you sure we have to do this now? She asked quietly. Denise turned to her daughter, her voice calm but firm. Yes, baby. She's been bullying you. She thinks she can get away with it. We're about to show her she can't. Brielle swallowed hard but nodded. Denise threw the car into park and stepped out, Brielle trailing close behind. Inside, the school halls were nearly empty. Most of the kids had already gone home. Denise headed straight for the main office, her heels clicking against the tile. The receptionist, Mrs. Caldwell, glanced up from her computer and smiled. Oh, hi, Miss Holloway. What can I need to speak with Principal Garrett. Now. Mrs. Caldwell's smile faltered. Is something wrong? Denise set the voice recorder on the counter. Yes. The receptionist's eyes flicked to Brielle, then back to Denise. One moment. She quickly picked up the phone, murmured something, then hung up. He's in a meeting, but I'll wait, Denise said, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Less than 2 minutes later, Principal Garrett appeared, adjusting his tie. He was a stocky man in his late 50s, with tired eyes and an air of permanent stress. Ms. Holloway, he greeted, forcing a polite smile. How can I help you? Denise lifted the recorder. You can start by explaining why my daughter's teacher has been stealing her lunch every day. The smile dropped. Excuse me. Denise pressed play. The moment Ms. Reynolds' voice came through, her condescending tone, the way she threatened Brielle, the temperature in the room shifted. Principal Garrett's face darkened. Mrs. Caldwell's hand flew to her mouth. When the recording ended, silence filled the office. Denise crossed her arms. Would you like to tell me why an educator is using her position to intimidate a child, or why she's personally eating the food she claims is against school policy? Principal Garrett exhaled through his nose, his expression unreadable. Miss Holloway, I don't know what to say. Denise leaned forward. Say you're going to do something about it. Garrett cleared his throat. Of course, we take allegations like this very seriously. This isn't an allegation, it's proof. Denise tapped the recorder. Mrs. Caldwell, still pale, turned to the principal. Sir, this isn't the first time we've had complaints about Ms. Reynolds. Denise's head snapped toward her. Excuse me. Garrett shot the receptionist a sharp look, but the damage was done. Denise's stomach twisted. So you knew? No, Garrett hesitated, rubbing his temple. We had concerns raised before, but nothing was ever proven. Denise's blood boiled. So you ignored them? Garrett sighed. Miss Holloway, please understand. Teachers are hard to replace. We can't act on every single accusation without concrete evidence. Denise stared at him in disbelief. My daughter's been coming home hungry for months because of a woman you refused to discipline. What else has she done to these kids? Garrett pinched the bridge of his nose. Miss Holloway, I assure you, I will handle this. Denise wasn't satisfied. I want to speak to her, now. Garrett hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. Denise's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. You have 10 seconds to bring her in here, or I'm going to the school board. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned and disappeared down the hall. Brielle's small fingers wrapped around Denise's hand. Mom, what if she lies? Denise squeezed back. She won't get the chance, because this time the truth was on their side. The office door swung open, and Ms. Kathleen Reynolds stepped in, her expression carefully neutral. She was in her late 40s, tall and lean, with sharp blue eyes that flickered with something unreadable. She smoothed down the front of her blouse, her posture stiff as she looked at Principal Garrett, then at Denise. You wanted to see me? She asked, her voice clipped. Denise didn't waste time. She hit play on the recorder. The room filled with Ms. Reynolds' own voice, her dismissive tone as she took the food, her veiled threats, the sickening satisfaction in the way she mocked Brielle while eating the lunch Denise had packed. When the recording ended, silence stretched between them. Ms. Reynolds blinked, her lips pressing into a thin line. I don't know what this is supposed to prove. Denise's jaw tightened. It proves that you've been stealing my daughter's lunch and threatening her to keep quiet. Ms. Reynolds crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. I enforce school policy, Miss Holloway. Some of the food parents send isn't in compliance with state guidelines. I have full authority to confiscate lunches that do not meet nutritional standards. Denise's blood boiled. Is that what you're calling it? Confiscating? I was following protocol. Denise stepped closer, eyes locked on the woman who had tormented her child. Protocol? Show me where in your protocol it says you get to eat the food you take. Ms. Reynolds' eyes darkened for the first time. No excuses. Denise's voice was ice. You singled out my daughter, no other student, just her. Why? Ms. Reynolds' jaw tensed. I don't have to explain myself to you. Principal Garrett, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. Ms. Reynolds, I need you to take this seriously. We have multiple concerns raised against you, and this recording is incredibly disturbing. For the first time, Ms. Reynolds' composure cracked. Concerns? She let out a hollow laugh. This is ridiculous. I have been a dedicated educator for over 20 years. I have sacrificed for this school. I have done things most teachers wouldn't. Denise's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Ms. Reynolds' gaze flickered to Brielle, just for a second, and something in Denise snapped. She stepped forward, her voice low but dangerous. Listen to me. You may have bullied other kids into silence, but you picked the wrong child this time. I'm not letting this go. Ms. Reynolds' nostrils flared. You people. The room went still. Brielle shrank back against Denise, and Principal Garrett's face drained of color. Denise's stomach turned. So that's what this was. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Say that again. Ms. Reynolds snapped her mouth shut. Denise shook her head. I knew there was something more to this. It was never about food, was it? You wanted to remind my daughter of her place. The teacher scoffed. Oh, give me a break. Denise turned to Principal Garrett. You hearing this? Garrett rubbed his temple. Ms. Reynolds, I need you to step outside. Ms. Reynolds opened her mouth to argue, but one look at Garrett's face made her stop. She let out an angry huff before turning on her heel and stalking out of the office. Denise didn't take her eyes off Principal Garrett. So what's going to happen now? He sighed heavily. There will be an investigation. The school board will need to be involved. This is serious, Ms. Holloway. Denise crossed her arms. You're damn right it is. Brielle, who had been silent, finally whispered, Is she gone? Denise wrapped an arm around her. She will be, baby. Garrett cleared his throat. I'll be in contact soon. And, Ms. Holloway? Denise raised an eyebrow. His voice was quieter. I'm sorry. This should never have happened. Denise exhaled. You're right. It shouldn't have. She took Brielle's hand and led her out of the office. But this wasn't over yet. Denise sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The past few days had been a whirlwind. Meetings with the school board, emails from other parents, and the overwhelming flood of emotions from uncovering just how deep this went. It turned out Brielle wasn't the only child Ms. Reynolds had targeted. After Denise went public with the recording, parents started talking. Quiet whispers turned into full-blown confessions. Other kids had complained about their lunches going missing, but none had proof. And just like Brielle, they had been scared to speak up. But the biggest shock came from Ms. Reynolds' file. She had been reprimanded before, several times. Small complaints here and there, most dismissed as misunderstandings. But there was a pattern. A quiet, insidious pattern of power plays against certain students. The school board had no choice but to take immediate action. By the end of the week, Ms. Reynolds was placed on administrative leave. By the end of the month, she was fired. Denise should have felt relieved. And in a way, she did. But sitting across from Brielle at the dinner table, watching her pick at her food, she knew the damage ran deeper than one teacher losing her job. "Baby?" Denise asked softly. Brielle looked up, her fork barely scraping against her plate. "You okay?" A small nod. "Yeah." Denise tilted her head. "Talk to me." Brielle sighed, pushing her plate away. I don't get it." Denise waited. "I never did anything to her," Brielle continued. "Why did she hate me so much?" Denise's heart clenched. She wished she had a simple answer, something that made sense. But the truth was there was no justifiable reason. She reached across the table, taking Brielle's small hand in hers. "Baby, sometimes people are just mean. And sometimes they pick on people who are kinder, stronger, better than them. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they want to feel bigger by making you feel small." Brielle frowned. "But why would a teacher do that?" Denise exhaled. "Because not all grown-ups deserve the jobs they have." Brielle was quiet for a moment. Then finally she muttered, "I'm glad she's gone." Denise squeezed her hand. "Me too, baby. And I'm so proud of you for being brave." Brielle managed a small smile. "You were brave too." Denise chuckled, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "Guess we make a good team, huh?" Brielle nodded, finally picking up her fork again. As she started eating, Denise felt something settle in her chest. Not just relief, but pride. Brielle had been hurt, yes, but she had also learned something powerful. Her voice mattered. And maybe, just maybe, Ms. Reynolds' downfall would be a warning to others, that no bully, no matter how old or powerful, could silence the truth forever. If this story resonated with you, let's talk about it. Have you ever faced something unfair but felt powerless to stop it? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe every child deserves to feel safe at school, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories like this one.